It was one of the darkest days in sports history. 21 years ago tonight, Dale Earnhardt died. Through a remarkable set of circumstances, KCTV5 broke the news that would leave millions of NASCAR fans heartbroken. But as KCTV5's Neil Jones reports, the biggest scoop in station history almost didn't get on the air.
It's February 18th, 2001. The Daytona 500 goes down to the final lap. Millions of people, including these fans in Overland Park, watch Michael Waltrip beat Dale Earnhardt Jr. to take the checkered flag. Most fans didn't pay much attention to the final lap wreck of Dale Earnhardt Sr. Didn't appear to be anything serious, although Earnhardt was taken to a nearby hospital.
I remember there's a shot of the ambulance leaving.
Leif Lysick was anchoring KCTV5 Sports that night.
They just kind of said, well, we'll have updates as we learn more.
Unbeknownst to Lysick, KCTV5 meteorologist Bruce Thomas was at the track's hospital with his mom, who had fallen and broken her hip down in Daytona. And when they learned that Earnhardt had been rushed to the same facility, it was his mom who encouraged Bruce to investigate.
She told me, Bruce, why don't you go down to the emergency room and find out for yourself?
Outside, the fans were leaving the track, not realizing that Earnhardt was seriously injured.
So I went 7 flights of stairs, walking straight down, and when I opened the door, I was in the emergency room. And there were people lined up and down the halls crying.
Earnhardt was the most famous driver in America, so by now the media was forming outside the hospital waiting for news.
There was this young doctor and some nurses up against the wall with their heads down, and I just stepped in real close to the doctor, and I never even said anything, and he just looked at me and he said, "We're about to move the body. We're about to move the body." And that's all I needed to know.
Bruce Thomas calls the station and says, Dale Earnhardt's dead.
The decision to announce the death of anyone, especially a world-famous person like Dale Earnhardt, is a very serious undertaking.
It's your reputation, it's the station's reputation.
In the end, Lysick and that night's news producer decided to go with the story.
Joe Ballion, who was the producer at the time, to his credit, realized what a huge story this was. He said, we're leading with it. What
surprised them was that KCTV5 was the only outlet reporting the death.
Nobody was reporting it. Nobody in the country was reporting it. And in NASCAR, you know how that's covered. There are reporters from all over the world there.
The Associated Press flashed the news worldwide, quoting Channel 5's story. But as 1 hour became 2, KCTV5 remained the only organization reporting the death.
I had faith in Bruce, but I was nervous.
Today, thanks to internet news sites and social media, the story almost assuredly would have leaked out. But in 2001, it took over 2 hours before NASCAR finally announced the tragic news.
Bruce was so confident about it, I think that made me confident about the story too.
Thomas was nominated for an Emmy Award for his work that day, but that meant little compared to the grief he felt over the tragedy.
It wasn't something I've ever bragged about. I've never framed and put any of this stuff up on my wall.
And that was true for the entire station, as no one was celebrating the biggest scoop in Channel 5's history. Neil Jones, KCTV5 Sports.
That was an amazing day. I was at that race, and actually I was sitting in turn 4. That was right where Dale Earnhardt crashed. I wasn't very far away from that crash at all, at the Daytona 500. I was working for a Fox affiliate in Orlando, Florida, and we were there with a big entourage with the station. When that crash happened, nobody thought that it was a fatal crash.
I was going to ask you, when you saw it in person, did you think, uh-oh?
And I wasn't very far away from the crash when it happened. So we get on the bus and we're driving back to Orlando, and we stopped to make a pit stop, and we went into a convenience store, and there were people who were crying, and they had just heard, and I don't remember that it was from KCTV5, but somebody said, this can't be right because the news is coming from somewhere in the Midwest.
Why from Kansas City?
And we were all journalists on the bus, and we thought, well, that can't be true then. And then it was just shortly after that, then it broke worldwide that, in fact, Dale Earnhardt was dead. I'll never forget that, and I can't believe that, I worked in Florida and then end up here at KCTV5 where the story was broke.
And it all comes together.
Amazing. Wow.